You kneel in the freshly turned soil, hands deep in the earth, the scent of rain still clinging in the air. The village gathered here hours ago, offering kola nuts and palm wine, singing praises to Allah. Now, it's just you and the grave, your mother's. The priest said that she would rest in Allah's embrace, that the goddess watches over the dead as she does the living. But grief gnaws at you, restless and unrelenting. So you do what no one dares. You whisper her name, not in prayer, but in demand. Allah. The earth trembles beneath your palms. A warmth spreads through the soil. And then she is there, rising like a mountain from the land itself. Dark-skinned, crowned in ivory, her presence is weight and comfort all at once. Her gaze settles on you, deep as the roots of the oldest trees. You call not with faith, but with sorrow. Tears slip down your cheeks. Is she safe? Your voice is small. Does she remember me? Allah kneels and presses her palms to the grave. The ground hums with something ancient, something endless. She remembers, and she is home. You close your eyes, and for the first time since the burial, you breathe. Hello and welcome back to Ladies of Lore, the podcast where we take all of the most wonderful women of mythology and folklore and we unpick, unravel and examine their origins, their stories and how they've changed over time to arrive in today's modern world. I'm India and it's Valentine's week. In fact, if you're listening to this on release day, then Valentine's Day is just 2 days away, so I hope you've got all of your gifts sorted and your flowers ordered and all of your stuff ready to go. Although I hope that you are showing your loved ones how much they mean to you every single day. And if you don't have a Valentine this year, then show yourself some love. You deserve it, you little cutie pie. Anyway, back to the main point of this week's episode. Today we're diving deep into the world of Allah, the revered Igbo goddess of earth, fertility and justice. And Allah is one of the most powerful deities in Igbo cosmology. She's the mother of all things, the one who nourishes life, upholds morality, and welcomes the dead into the afterlife. But where did she come from? How has her influence changed over time? And how do we still see her presence today? Let's step into her sacred domain and find out. Allah, sometimes spelled Ani or Ale, is one of the oldest and most important deities in Igbo spirituality, deeply connected to the land itself. The Igbo people number over 16 million, which makes them one of the largest ethnic groups in Nigeria. And the Igbo people have a rich cultural heritage, their own language and their own traditions. And they're predominantly found in southeastern Nigeria and are known for their strong emphasis on community, entrepreneurship, and democratic governance. But before we go into too much detail, I'll tell you a little bit about Igbo cosmology, as I realise I've mentioned the Igbo people a few times actually now on the podcast, but I haven't dove too deep. I'm going to keep that in. I don't keep my bloopers in. It is bloopers, isn't it? Okay, I don't keep my bloopers in, but you can have that one. But no, I haven't been into too much detail about Igbo cosmology, so we'll talk a little bit about that first before I go into detail about Allah herself. So Igbo cosmology is deeply spiritual, and it reflects a complex understanding of the universe, human existence, and the relationship between physical and metaphysical worlds. Every individual is believed to have a personal spirit called chi, which acts as a guiding force in their destiny. And this concept is similar to the idea of a personal guardian or fate, and it plays a crucial role in shaping a person's success or misfortunes in life. The supreme or highest god in Igbo cosmology is called Chukwu or Chi Ukwu, and his name is translated to the Great Spirit. And the Igbo religion thinks of Chukwu as an all-powerful, all-knowing divinity. He is the maker of the cosmos as well as all of the minor gods that make up the Igbo pantheon. And besides Chukwu, the Igbo pantheon has various deities known as Alusi or Arusi, which serve as intermediaries between humans and the supreme god. And Allah is the daughter of Chukwu and one of these very Alusi. And although Chukwu may be the supreme god, Allah is the one that the Igbo people feel the closest connection to, and they believe that all human beings, after their death, return to her womb, symbolising her role as both the giver and the receiver of life. Much like Mami Wata from last week, the earliest known references to Allah appear in oral tradition and were passed down for centuries. Though there's no single ancient text that records her origins, her presence is strongly felt in the deep-rooted traditions of the Igbo communities, and she was central to the spiritual and legal systems that govern them. European ethnographers in the 19th and early 20th century recorded the widespread veneration of Allah, noting that shrines were found in nearly every village. Allah is considered the ultimate judge of human actions, as she's responsible for ensuring justice and balance in both the spiritual and physical worlds. She's deeply intertwined in the Igbo culture, religion, and daily life. She is associated with the land itself, and any disruption of the earth, such as deforestation, pollution, or unlawful acts, could be seen as a violation of her sacred space. And her influence extends into law and order, as taboos and societal norms are often believed to originate from Allah. Crimes such as murder, incest, and stealing are considered abominations, and violating these moral laws requires purification rituals to restore harmony with the goddess. Allah is depicted as a powerful maternal figure, often represented in sacred shrines and sculptures with a serene and protective demeanour, reinforcing her nurturing role. During traditional festivals such as the New Yam Festival, prayers and offerings are made to Allah to ensure a bountiful harvest and community prosperity. Before planting and harvesting, they hold days of ritual ceremonies to appease Allah so that she will facilitate the growth of healthy crops, or to thank her for making possible the abundant harvest soon to begin. Allah's role extends far beyond agriculture and morality though, and she goes into spiritual protection. She is the link between the living and the ancestors, making her a crucial figure in ancestral worship. Many Igbo families have personal shrines dedicated to her, where they offer sacrifices and seek her guidance in times of trouble. Because of her connection to fertility, women often pray to Allah for children, and barren women might seek her intervention to conceive. Allah is often depicted as a majestic woman, sometimes with an elongated body, emphasising her connection to the earth. In traditional Igbo art, she is sometimes painted with intricate designs, representing her role as the source of beauty, fertility, and creativity. Her body is said to be the land itself, and mountains, rivers, and forests are her features. One striking representation of Allah is found in Mabari houses, and these are sacred shrines created as offerings to her, and they're elaborately decorated clay temples, filled with painted sculptures of Allah, other deities, animals, and scenes of everyday life. Creating a Mabari house is considered an act of devotion, a way of ensuring Allah's continued favour. And when you learn a little bit more about the Igbo people and the way that they lived, it's even more striking that the god that they felt closest to and worshipped most heavily was a woman. Because women in Igbo society were very highly respected. They had their own clubs, some even secret clubs, and title associations that complemented that of men. They had control over certain areas of life and were also believed to possess superior spiritual well-being, so consequently they headed many of the traditional shrines. And not only this, in some districts, women married other women and they fathered their own children, which I think is pretty cool. So hopefully now you're feeling a little bit more clued up on Allah, so let's talk about some of the most interesting stories about her. First, I'll tell you the myth of Allah's creation and her role as guardian of the earth. Long ago, before the world took its current form, the supreme god Chukwu decided to shape the universe. He divided existence into two realms, Allah Mumo, the spirit world, and Allah Nadu, the world of the living. To rule over the physical realm, he chose Allah, the Earth Goddess, entrusting her with the care of all creation. Unlike other deities who existed in the sky or specific locations, Allah was everywhere. She was the land itself, and everything that lived on it was under her protection. One day, a greedy chief sought to defy Allah's laws. He was a wealthy man, but his heart was full of selfishness. He coveted the land of a poor farmer and, using trickery, managed to steal it. The villagers were outraged, but they feared the chief's power. However, Allah did not allow such an injustice to go unpunished. That night, the chief had a vision. A great woman, clothed in flowing earth-coloured robes, appeared before him. Her eyes glowed with fire, and her voice was like the rumbling of a distant thunder. "You have defiled my sacred land," she said. "Return what is not yours, or you will suffer the consequences." The chief woke in a cold sweat, but he dismissed the dream. He had no intention of returning the land. However, from that day forward, misfortunes befell him. His crops withered, his livestock fell sick, and his wealth dwindled. When he finally sought the help of a diviner, he was told that he had broken Allah's sacred laws. Only by confessing his wrongdoing and making a public sacrifice to Allah could he hope to be spared. Realizing his mistake, the chief returned the land, and after performing the purification rites, his fortunes improved. And this story remains a warning. No one, no matter how powerful, can escape the judgment of Allah. And here's another tale about a reincarnated child. A long time ago, in a small Igbo village, a woman gave birth to a son. He was bright and unusual, always speaking with wisdom far beyond his years. As he grew older, he began to recall memories that did not belong to him. One day, while passing a neighbourhood compound, he pointed at an old house and he said, "That used to be my home." The villagers were startled. The boy had never been to that house before. The owners, curious, asked him to explain. He described events and people that only their deceased father could have known. He even told them where he had hidden a small box of precious cowries before he died. When they dug beneath an old tree, they found the box, exactly where he said it would be. The elders of the village gathered and confirmed what they had already suspected. The boy was the reincarnation of their late kinsman. And the Igbo believe that Allah governs reincarnation, sending spirits back into the world through her womb. And this story was proof of her power. From that day, the boy was treated with great respect, and the people reaffirmed their reverence for Allah, knowing that she alone controlled the cycle of life and death. And finally, here's a story of a marriage that angered Allah. She wasn't happy about this one. In another village, a young couple fell in love and decided to marry. However, in their excitement, they failed to seek Allah's blessing, and it was custom for newlyweds to offer a sacrifice to Allah before the wedding, because she was the guardian of fertility and family life. Ignoring this tradition, the couple went ahead with their union. Shortly after, misfortunes began to strike. The wife suffered repeated miscarriages and the husband's business collapsed. No matter what they tried, they just could not find peace. Desperate, they visited a dibia, who told them that Allah had not been honoured. "You have taken a sacred step without her blessing," the diviner said. Realising their mistake, the couple quickly performed the traditional marriage rites to honour Allah. They made offerings at her shrine and asked for her forgiveness. And soon after that, their troubles ended, and they were blessed with children. And this tale serves as a warning that all major life events must be undertaken with respect for Allah, who governs the balance of life. And these stories illustrate the deep connection between Allah and the Igbo way of life. She's not just a deity, but she's an ever-present force, ensuring that the world remains in balance, whether that's through enforcing justice or sustaining fertility, governing reincarnation or protecting families. Allah remains central to the Igbo worldview. And if you want to learn a little bit more about Igbo cosmology and just general Igbo ways of life, I have put some of the source material I used in the show notes. And if I'm being honest, there are some actually really fascinating academic journals and essays in there, so I definitely recommend reading them if you get a chance. So it's clear to see that Allah played a pivotal role in Igbo ways of life. But how has this role changed and adapted over time? And was it impacted by colonial rule? Let's find out. The role of Allah and her significance within the Igbo people has changed and evolved over time, particularly as Igbo society has undergone cultural, religious and social transformations. Perhaps the biggest factor in changes to the way Allah has been considered was the arrival of the British, and the impact of colonialism on Igbo cosmology was pretty profound and far-reaching. When British colonisers arrived in the 19th century, they brought with them not just political control, but also Christian missionaries who actively worked to dismantle traditional belief systems. The colonial period saw systematic attempts to suppress indigenous spiritual practices, including the worship of Allah and other deities. Christian missionaries often labelled traditional practices as primitive or demonic, forcing many Igbo people to choose between their ancestral beliefs and a new religion. And this is a bit of a tale as old as time, really, isn't it? We've seen it so many times on the podcast. Christians go over and colonise somewhere and tell them that their religion is demonic and just try to dismantle their communities. It just happens, doesn't it? It just happens everywhere. But this created deep spiritual conflicts within communities. Sacred groves, traditionally protected as Allah's dwelling places, were sometimes destroyed or converted into church grounds. And the traditional role of a dibia, or a priest or a healer, was undermined, and many ritual practices were driven underground. However, the Igbo response to this religious colonisation was complex and also super interesting, because rather than completely abandoning their traditional beliefs, many Igbo people developed a more of a syncretic approach, finding ways to maintain aspects of their traditional cosmology while also adopting Christian practices. And some continue to observe traditional taboos and customs in private, but publicly practice Christianity. And the concept of Allah remained influential in cultural memory even when her worship was no longer openly practiced. And even more interestingly, the Igbo people, they were pretty pacifist, and they respected the religious views of other people. So they were open to listening. They listened to the Christians, and they expected to receive the same courtesy in return. But missionaries didn't listen, and they were just prepared to destroy the entire system of Igbo customs and beliefs in order to convert people to Christianity. And many missionaries wrote home, telling of the awful, backwards and barbaric Igbo ways, which only helped to fuel the drive to convert them to Christianity and bring them into order. And there ended up being this kind of cycle of violence. And the more Christians pushed and did things to upset the Igbo people, such as kill and eat sacred fish or destroy shrines, the more the Igbo began to retaliate. And this retaliation was responded to by the British with further violence and control. And there is a fascinating book that I read while doing the research for this episode that I'll post in the show notes, because I could really talk about this all day. And the colonial period also brought about changes in traditional governance systems that were intertwined with religious practice. The British system of indirect rule disrupted the traditional balance between spiritual and secular authority, where Allah's priests had previously played a crucial role in maintaining social order. And this led to a fragmentation of traditional power structures and a gradual erosion of the religious systems that had governed Igbo society for generations. And during my reading, I found a really interesting passage which I'd love to read to you guys, because it sums up exactly what I've just said pretty nicely. Yet, paradoxically, of all Nigerian peoples, the Igbo have probably changed the least while changing the most. While most of the formal elements of the social, religious, economic, and political structure, such as lineages, family groups, and secret societies, have been modified through cultural contact, many of the basic patterns of social behaviour, such as the emphasis on alternative choices and goals, achievement and competition, and the lack of autocratic authority, have survived and formed part of the newly developing culture. But basic patterns of social behaviour, of interpersonal relationships, have changed little, though new symbols of success replace old ones, and new goals appear. And that was written by Ottenberg in 1959, and I've put the source in the show notes as per usual. I just found that really, really interesting. And to be honest with you, this has been one of the most interesting bits of research that I've done since I started the podcast. I actually really, really enjoyed reading about this. So I hope that you guys have enjoyed, because I'm aware I've spoken a little bit more generally about the Igbo people and their cosmology and the history and colonialism, rather than specifically talking about Allah. But I do think it's a really important thing to discuss. I genuinely love learning this stuff, and I love teaching you guys these things even more than I love learning it myself. So I hope you don't mind this slightly long tangent and a little bit more focus on sort of historical stuff. But with it being Black History Month, I really wanted to unpick a little bit more of the history side of things. And while we're here talking about history stuff, I am so excited to tell you all that there will be a new series coming relatively soon, which will focus on amazing women throughout history as opposed to mythological women. And I'm going to give you all the details on that when it's all finalised. I'm still thinking of a name for it, so if anyone's got any ideas, pop them in the comments for me. But yeah, I'm still thinking of all of the format and just figuring it all out. But I will release full details along with all of the information that you need to be able to listen to it, and all of the other stuff that I keep teasing every week. It's coming very, very soon, and I'll tell you all about it so soon. I'm very excited. But with that being said, let's shoot forward to the modern day to have a little look at how Allah shows up today. In modern times, Allah's presence continues to be felt in various cultural expressions. Contemporary Nigerian artists and writers draw inspiration from her mythology to explore themes of identity, morality, and the environment. For instance, in literature, Allah's symbolism is evident in works that delve into the complexities of Igbo culture and the impact of colonialism. One notable example is Chinua Achebe's seminal novel, Things Fall Apart. Things Fall Apart provides a profound exploration of Igbo society at the cusp of colonial intrusion. Within the narrative, Achebe illustrates the centrality of Allah in the daily lives of the Igbo people. The protagonist, Okonkwo, inadvertently commits a crime by killing a clansman, an act considered an offence against the Earth Goddess. As a result, he is compelled to flee from his clan to avoid the wrath of Allah. This incident underscores the belief that homicide, whether accidental or intentional, is a grave violation against the Earth Goddess, necessitating appropriate punishment and rituals to cleanse the land. Failure to do so could invoke Allah's vengeance upon the entire community. Achebe further emphasises Allah's prominence by describing her as playing a greater part in the life of the people than any other deity. She is portrayed as the ultimate judge of morality and conduct, in close communion with the departed ancestors whose bodies have been committed to the earth. This depiction highlights her integral role in maintaining the moral fabric and the spiritual well-being of society. And this book has got incredible reviews. I have read an excerpt, and I would say it's definitely one to add to your list. Add it to the Ladies of Law book club list, because it just seems very, very good. I'm definitely going to read that one. I've really enjoyed the research into this particular episode and learning all about the Igbo society, culture and cosmology. So that's definitely one that I'm going to be reading. And if you guys read it too, please do let me know, because I actually really love hearing about all of the things that you guys are learning and all of the things that you're reading. So please do let me know if you read it. But beyond literature, Allah's influence extends to modern art and cultural festivals. Artists continue to create work that pay homage to her, blending traditional motifs with contemporary styles to keep her legacy alive. Festivals celebrating the yam harvest still honour Allah to this day, with rituals and dances performed to seek her blessings for fertility and prosperity. One notable example of Allah in modern art is the bronze sculpture Anyanwu, meaning the awakening, created by Nigerian artist Ben Enwonowu between 1954 and 1955. And this sculpture was originally created to mark the opening of the Nigerian National Museum in Lagos in 1956, and it remains on display there. A life-size version was also presented to the United Nations in 1966, and it's exhibited in the UN headquarters in New York City. Anyanwu symbolises the rising nation and reflects the artist's fusion of indigenous aesthetic traditions with Western technique. And as per usual, there is a link in the show notes to a picture of that very sculpture, which I'd really recommend you go and have a look at, because it's very, very interesting to look at. And isn't it fascinating that of all of the things that could be presented to the United Nations, that is what they chose, because it just shows how significant Allah still remains to Igbo people to this day. In contemporary visual arts, Nigerian artist Kelechi Nwaneri's 2021 exhibition titled Myths at a gallery in Berlin features mixed media artworks that vividly reimagine deities and characters from Igbo mythology. One of his paintings portrays Allah, and she's adorned with colourful patterned fabric and an orange halo, symbolising her connection to the spiritual world. And this depiction blends traditional Igbo symbols with modern artistic expressions, highlighting the enduring relevance of Allah in contemporary art. And even in language, Allah still endures. The Igbo concept of Allah Igbo, meaning Igbo land, directly ties the people's identity to their goddess. She is more than just a deity. She is home itself. And in modern times, there has been a resurgence of interest in indigenous spirituality, and there are contemporary practitioners who continue to honour Allah, seeing her not just as a deity of the past, but as a vital force in today's world too. So it's clear to see that Allah remains a pivotal figure in both historical and contemporary Igbo culture. Her representation in modern literature, art and cultural practices underscore her enduring significance as the embodiment of the earth, morality and fertility. Through works like Things Fall Apart, her influence is highlighted, showing the profound impact she has on the moral and spiritual dimensions of Igbo society. And in art, the examples I've said, they illustrate how Allah's influence permeate into modern media. She is a source of inspiration for artists who seek to explore and celebrate Igbo cultural heritage through their creative endeavours. Allah is more than just a goddess of the past. She is a living presence, woven into the identity of the Igbo people. From ancient times to modern activism, her spirit endures, reminding us to honour the land, uphold justice and celebrate life. Thank you so much for joining me today on Ladies of Law. I am sorry it is a little bit of a shorter episode this week. I have had an extremely busy week. I don't know if you guys know this, but I work full time and I'm also doing a degree in history and I'm also doing this podcast, and sometimes everything has to be done at the same time. So it's been a bit of a juggling act this last week, so I do apologise that this is not the length of the usual episodes, but I do hope that you've really enjoyed it, and if you have, please be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening, and if you're feeling generous, you can always leave me a review. Let me know what you think in the comments or over on Blue Sky, as I always love to hear from you guys, and I'll be back next week to unravel another thread in the rich tapestry of women in mythology and folklore.